everyone, you're here with Audio Map. I hope you guys are having a great day. So I just wanted to make a short video because I have devised what I think is a fairly accurate representation of a real-world mix session. And I'm going to see how many tracks we can run both using Rosetta and on the native M1 Logic performance. Let's go ahead and I'll explain what's going on here. So I've got a whole bunch of audio tracks. Right now I've got 25 in sets of 5. So each of these chunks is going to a specific bus. So if we look over here, we have these 5 audio tracks are going to what we're calling the quote-unquote lead vocal. These next 5 will go to the backing vocals, keys, bass, drums. Then we've got, for every audio track, we've got an EQ and a compressor, and we've got 2 sends to these reverb buses. So now the reverb buses are going to go to this larger effects bus. The lead vox and backing vox are going to go to the vox bus, and then the instrument buses are going to go to this inst bus. Now all of these buses have 3 plugins on them just to kind of simulate a mix session, and then all of these final 3 buses are going to go to the stereo out. So this is kind of a fairly typical top-down mixing approach where you've got layers of buses and then audio tracks at the foundation. Now I think this will be a pretty typical representation because I've got 2 plugins, an EQ and compressor, so it's like we've got a channel strip on every audio track, and then we've got a little bit more going on the buses. I think when you kind of take the average of it though, some tracks in a real mix might have more plugins, and probably many would have fewer. So particularly if you're mixing where you're mixing through your buses first, you probably won't put as many plugins on the tracks, but maybe some will have a lot more. So I think this is a pretty realistic example. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run what we have here and take a look at our CPU performance. And then we will have the screen recorder on, as you can see, so that will take a small hit, but I think it'll be okay. Now I'm going to do most of the testing in front of you and then just speed up the results, but then I'll do the final count with the screen recorder off, and I'll meet you guys at the charts. So this is what it's going to look like. There's no sound because each of these is just a blank audio file. Right? It doesn't really matter if there's anything in the audio file in terms of CPU performance. So right now we're at 25 tracks. It looks like we're using around a quarter of the CPU, and we are currently running Logic in Rosetta. So I will be repeating these on the M1 and also on my 15-inch MacBook Pro just for comparison. So I'm going to go ahead and see how many tracks I can get on here, and you guys can see what I'm up to. I'll fast forward it for you and then meet you guys in the charts after I've done all the testing. Okay, so I've doubled the count, and it looks like we're coming up around 30%, so it seems like it might not be scaling linearly. That's a good sign because we now have 50 tracks, and we're not yet at 50%. It seems like we're more like 35% of CPU usage about. So let's see how many more we can do. I'll try doubling it again to 100 tracks. I just realized I've been doing this all while it's playing, so that's pretty interesting that it's so snappy while I'm kind of doubling the track count in a mixed environment. Okay, so 100 tracks in Rosetta, and we're just about 50% of the CPU. Does this mean we're going to be able to go towards up to 200? Okay, I'm going to try doubling it again. Okay, so we have 5 sets of 40 tracks all feeding into these 2 layers of buses and a final stereo out. Let's see if this runs. Yeah, and we can run 200 tracks in a mix environment while screen recording. And seems like we're not even quite at 90% of our CPU usage, so yeah, if anyone was thinking you couldn't mix large or real production sessions on an M1 MacBook Air without a fan, you really need to rethink that, because this is insane. I'm pretty confident my 15-inch MacBook Pro will not be able to run this. I will test it. And remember, we're in Rosetta right now. I wonder how much more we can get. Let's see if 250 can run, screen recording and all. And it can. Oh my gosh, we can run 250 tracks with plugins, with sends. with buses, and it's still very snappy. Yeah, this is pretty crazy. I'm actually very shocked. I didn't think we were going to get this many tracks. I thought we were going to get around 100, 150 max maybe. But yeah, we're at 250 tracks. Okay, I'm going to go test this in the native Logic app. Okay, we're here in the native Logic app. We've got 250 tracks loaded. Let's see what happens. Wow, we're not even at 75%. Okay, this is, I'm sorry, I'm not processing this right. 250 tracks. Okay, should I try 350? Okay, I'm gonna try 350. I'm gonna add 20 more to each section and add 100 more. Okay, looks good. We're at 350 tracks. Just about 90% CPU usage, it looks like. Let's go ahead and be a little more precise. Yeah, we're not coming up on the RAM limits of the computer, really. 10 gigs out of the 16. I would recommend the 16 gig, clearly. I mean, we wouldn't have this many gigs. Although it seems like Logic's only using about 5.58 to the rest of the system stuff. Now if we go to CPU usage, not quite sure what 479% CPU usage means. I'm a music producer at heart. It looks like we're using, I don't know, probably will cut this section. Okay, 90%, 350. I guess let's try 400. Let's see if it'll run. So 50 more. Okay, everyone, so we've got 5 groups of 80 tracks each for a total of 400 tracks, going to 5 different buses, then to 3 more buses, and then finally to stereo out with plugins on everything. Let's see if it can run 400 in a mix session. Oh my gosh, it's doing it. We're just about maxing out the CPU usage. We do have the screen recording on again, but I'm not going to bother doing without it because it seems like that's probably a pretty minute fraction of the CPU usage right now. So we got 250 on Rosetta and 400 on native Logic performance. Okay, if anyone's worried at all that this system can't perform, even if it's translating all of your plugins from Intel, I don't think you need to worry. I mean, the computer is slightly warm to the touch, but it's honestly not hot, and there's no fan noise. You could legitimately record with this with no noise in a busy mix session, it seems. I will be testing that to see how latency is affected, but I mean, clearly this is a vast upgrade in every way over the previous systems. So yeah, it's running 400. It's like still snappy too, like pretty snappy. It's maybe slowed down a little here at the end, but still usable for sure. Okay, I'm gonna go run this on the 15-inch MacBook Pro, and then I will meet you in the chart for a final comparison. Okay, everyone, I don't have my proper mic set up here, but I'm on the 15-inch, and I just wanted to show you guys what we're getting. So right now we're at 100 tracks. Session's kind of laggy. Turning on the screen recorder just affected it. So for reference, before I turned on the screen recorder, this was sitting just around 70%, so whereas the M1 MacBook can handle the screen recorder at the same time, this one's nearly at 100% now, jumping back and forth. So I'm going to see what the total count is, but I just wanted you guys to see this. You weren't even able to see that at 100 tracks, so 20. Yeah, system overload. I'm going to turn the screen recorder off. Okay, guys, I'm here with the results, and man, this is just mind-blowing. I really wasn't expecting kind of this magnitude of a difference. I guess I should have been, because if we go and check out the benchmark from a few days ago, the new Logic Pro benchmark, we're having about twice the performance on native Logic on the M1 MacBook Air versus my 2017 15-inch MacBook Pro. This one was kind of a harder benchmark to conceptualize because we've got fewer tracks, but then we've got an instrument plugin and lots of plugins on every single track. So it's kind of less realistic for a mix scenario, but we're getting roughly the same results, because if we see, we have moderately more performance on Rosetta than on the 15-inch, and then twice the performance. And that's what we've got right here. But still, I mean, the quality of life on even Rosetta was so much higher than on the MacBook Pro while we were running these tracks. You guys saw it for yourself. I couldn't run the screen recorder and move around Logic and get the same kind of performance results with the 15-inch MacBook Pro, even at 100 tracks. But whereas all the way up at 250 and 400 tracks on these systems, we still had, the screen recorder wasn't an issue. Moving around the interface was barely slowed down at 100% CPU, but still really usable. And this one became really unusable really quickly. Honestly, when I opened this on the 15-inch MacBook Pro with all 400 tracks loaded, just opening it caused quite a bit of lag on the 15-inch. And the fan spun up and the computer got really hot right away. And at the very highest of these tracks, the computer was just only slightly warm. Yeah, I mean, you guys seen it for yourselves. This computer is a beast. And the fact that it's fanless, I really think can't be overstated. Because we're musicians, right? We need to record. And that jet engine of a MacBook Pro 15-inch fan noise is just, it's just always a problem when I'm recording. I'm sure you guys have experienced this. And if you're in a home studio, like probably most of us are these days, then you really don't want that fan noise, because your computer is going to be in the same room that you're recording in almost always. So this is a pretty big deal. I mean, yeah, you could wait for some of the new MacBook Pros with better chips that are coming, the supposed M1X and maybe 4 USB ports, but honestly, with this much performance overhead and a no fan design, this can run pretty much any mix session almost anyone on the planet's going to be running. I mean, people produce music on years-old computers, so yeah, this is about as good as it can get, given that we can also run with a fanless design. Okay, I'll be updating you guys tomorrow with some more plugin compatibility. We've got some updates from Native Instruments. We've got some updates for some of the instruments that you guys might be running, so make sure you're subscribed so you can see that video when it drops, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.